Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and coming up here on today's show, according to Sports Illustrated, the Raiders should look to potentially sign a linebacker in free agency. I saw an article released by SI, and I was like, okay, I've had a few people ask me, and I know people really trust Hondo, and they listen to Hondo and what he has to say. So I said, okay, the Raiders right now, as it stands, have 2 open roster spots. Remember, they signed Michael Gallup. They signed Jalen. Guyton was literally today at the time that I'm making this video. So that means they have 2 open roster spots, probably somewhere around like $14 million in salary cap space, even after the draft. So what we're going to be looking at today is the top 10 options in free agency. I'll also say this, just because you see a name here on today's show does not mean that I think that the Raiders should sign that player. If anything, it's here are the 10 best options for Patrick Graham's defense, for Antonio Pierce, for Mike Caldwell, the Raiders linebacker coach. And if you don't like those options, then you don't need to sign anybody. Just because you don't like the linebacker room doesn't mean that there are better options out there. Maybe there are, maybe there aren't. We'll talk about that, though, here in just a little bit. First off, though, I do want to show you the Raiders linebacker room, and as it stands right now, you got Robert Spillane. He's going to be a lock to make this roster. Divine Diablo is going to be in the final year of his contract. Luke Masterson has been a UDFA, but, let's give my man some flowers. Has been playing some pretty solid football. You drafted Tommy Eichenberg in round 5 out of Ohio State. Amari Burney, 6th-round pick from Florida last year, different regime. Then you decided to bring back Kanai Malga, and then Darian Butler. He's got the connection with Antonio Pierce from their days back at ASU. So here's my honest question with the nation out there. What is your confidence level in the Raiders linebacker room? Scale it for me from 1 to 10. 1, you're not confident at all. 10, it's the best linebacker group in the National Football League. The way that I would answer this question is this. If you are somewhere that's like 1 to 5, you probably want to go out and add another linebacker to this room, whether it's depth or whether it's that potential starter. If you're like 6 and above, first off, congratulations. But then also on top of that, then maybe you don't need to add a linebacker, because I've always said that linebacker right now in the NFL is like the running back position. It's the most easy position to replace, especially in a Patrick Graham defense. So just because you're going to see some of these players, that doesn't mean that I think that they're good enough to make the roster. It's more of just, all right, if Hondo's going to say, if Sports Illustrated is going to say the Raiders need to go out and add a linebacker, cool, it's easy to say that, but what are the options out there? So I'm going to show you the top 10 options. Y'all can figure out who you think's the best fit. We are going to go from 10. We're going to work our way down to 1, and I'll tell you why I have these guys ranked where I do. Let's go to number 10 here on the list. It's Curtis Bolton, and Bolton was a member of this team the past 2 seasons, and let's face it, I think the other part of this question is, cool, if you're going to add a linebacker, does that mean that you're going to try to find somebody that gives you that ability on special teams? Because Bolton is only a special teams player. That's what he is. If you're trying to get him to do anything more than that, it's just simply not going to work. He's only good at stopping the run. He is a good gunner for special teams just because he's got that, reckless abandon, flying down the field, pinning his ears back, going to hit somebody. He's played 23 games for the Raiders the last 2 seasons, and has shown that he brings that fiery tenacity ability. But, in terms of actually being a reliable linebacker, especially in coverage, that's just not really what he brings to the table. Let's go to number 9 here on my list. It's Cam Gill, linebacker, and he's kind of bounced around with a few different teams. Most recently was a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and 12 tackles last season, and some of these names, I'm telling you right now, they're not going to be eye-popping names. That's part of the video here. Played with the Raiders linebacker coach, though, Mike Caldwell, for 2 seasons in Tampa. That was back in 2020 and in 2021. Missed 2022 season with a Liz Frank injury. But, if you look at his numbers from last year, very limited sample size, 83.8 overall PFF grade, decent against coverage, good against pass rush, good against run defense. If you're looking for somebody that just can come in there and compete almost like a Michael Gallup, or almost like maybe he'd probably be a little bit more of a Jalen Guyton type signing, where you're like, I don't know if this guy's going to end up making this roster, but could he provide a little bit of extra competition? And does he know Mike Caldwell, which he obviously does from their time together? Could that be somebody that just ends up being that final roster spot? Only time's going to tell. If you're looking for the most interactive and informative Raiders channel on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. Not only do we go live at least 3 times a week, we're also going to be doing a lot of insane videos in the offseason, and I can't wait when the NFL schedule release, which is going to be this Thursday, May 9th, when that schedule comes out, we're also going to give you our schedule for our live Madden simulations. We did it last season. It was a huge success. If you like hanging out with the nation, if you're like me and you just want to listen to people, don't get me wrong. I like listening to the Graph. I like listening to the Wasted. If you enjoy watching those guys, I think you're going to enjoy what we do here as well. Let's go to number 8 here on our free agent linebacker targets. Calvin Munson. And what you're going to see with a lot of these names is at this point in the offseason, I'm looking for connections, right? Like, I'm looking for, have you worked with anybody on our roster and what's the fit? Munson was on the Dolphins in 2019. That was with Patrick Graham. He's also played on the Patriots, Giants, and Dolphins. The reason why that I thought that that was notable is because this organization is built around right now, especially, it is. There's a lot of Patriot influence. There's a lot of Giant influence. There's a lot of Miami Dolphin influence just over the past 5 seasons. That's a cold, hard fact in this. 9 games played the past 2 seasons, 0 starts. So, again, you're looking at just probably a special teams player, really, really cheap type of deal. 1 year, $1.2 million contract. Let him come in. Let him compete during the offseason. And could that be an extra fuel to the fire for some of these younger guys like a Amari Burney, like a Luke Masterson, just to light that fire underneath their butt a little bit to try to make that 53-man. Let's go to number 7. This one's a little bit more of a notable name, Quan Alexander. And when I say Quan Alexander, I think a lot of y'all are going to think of him as the elite linebacker edge rusher that he was with the San Francisco 49ers. 14 starts, though, the last 2 seasons. He did play 17 games in 2022, which I'm not going to lie to y'all, even I was surprised by that fact, and Chucks was too. Recently has been bad against the run, but I think he could still get after the quarterback. If you're looking for the Kwon Alexander of what he was a few years ago, that's just simply not going to happen, right? If you want a player in the way that the Raiders would need to use him, and I make this reference all the time here on this show, I want a Ben Samayoa. I want a Ben Samayoa in 2019 when him and Maxx Crosby combined, and Mayoa had 8 sacks. You put Kwon Alexander in the game on 3rd down, 4th down, strictly only letting him pin his ears back, get after the quarterback. That does have some, that's a valuable role right now for the Raiders because outside of your top few edge rushers, and I know we're talking linebackers, but the way that I would use Kwon Alexander is probably a little bit more of an edge rusher, just in case, 5-10 snaps a game when some of your other players do need a little bit of a breather. Mother's Day, y'all, it is right around the corner. It's crazy how soon this is going to be, and probably your final opportunity to make sure that you get something for your mom. Make sure you get something for your wife. If you're a parent out there and your daughter, she's got kids, hey, get her something special. And to me, I think Raider Nation is amazing because it proves to me every single day that you don't have to be blood to be family. And if you want to try to continue to grow the nation, hey, you can grow both families here at once. How do you do it? Go to chatsports.com/RaiderMom. We got T-shirts. There's, jerseys. There's, what are these things called that hold wine? Tumbler. I couldn't think of the name. We got coffee holders, which I actually just got my mom one of these. We got Best Mom Ever T-shirts. Bottom line is if you need just that extra gift, because my mom's not really easy to shop for, I'll be honest with you. She'll tell me every time, don't get me anything. Don't get me anything. If your mom is the queen of, hey, don't get me anything for Mother's Day, well, guess what? You're not going to get her anything. Get her some flowers, maybe get her a Raiders t-shirt or something like that. Chatsports.com/RaiderMom. And for the daring people out there, this is the last day that we have this link as well. Chatsports.com/RaiderMilf. That's up to you. You can click on it if you want. Chatsports.com/RaiderMilf. You can spell it RAIDERMILF. You're welcome. Let's go to number 6 here. We're raising the bar. We're going to go with Anthony Barr at the linebacker position. And this is another probably bigger name guy that I know a lot of people, when they watch this show, they're going to be a little bit more accustomed to. But with age, father time, undefeated, dealt with hamstring and groin injuries last year. He missed 13 games. When he's healthy, I do still think that he can be a reliable linebacker in the National Football League. I also am a believer in what does it take for a guy like Barr to make the Raiders? Now, the reason why he's ranked 6th is because I do think that this would be somebody that could get into the starting lineup if he's healthy. If he is healthy, he's going to be one of our starters. The other way that he potentially gets on the roster goes, all right, Luke Getsy's like, well, I actually went up against this guy from 2014 to, 2021. He was a member of the Minnesota Vikings. Getsy, when he was with the Green Bay Packers and obviously with the Bears as well, that's a lot of sample size of you going up against, or at least seeing somebody not just one time a year, twice a year. And sure, there was a year there, it was with the Cowboys, but if I'm Getsy and I'm in that offensive coordinator standpoint, hell, even if you talk to a guy like Devontae Adams, you're going to be like, do you remember Anthony Barr? Sometimes those are the little types of conversations that need to happen just to get a spark fired. You bring him in on a workout. If he ends up being healthy, Anthony Barr could be a member of the Silver and Black. The biggest reason why I made this show is because the number one linebacker that I probably get asked about right now of, hey, Mitch, should Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco, should they bring in an LB? Shaq Leonard is by far the number one name that I get. Started 12 games last season. He played with the Philadelphia Eagles, also played with the Indianapolis Colts. The problem that I have with Shaq Leonard is, and I hate this because he was one of the best linebackers in the entire league. Then he started getting these nerve issues in his neck and his back, and I don't think he got it in his pussy or his crack. But I do know this, like his 2023 PFF grade, Shug's like, wow, I can't believe you said that. 62.8 overall grade, 66.9 run defense grade. Like, he's not that elite linebacker that I think a lot of people still remember and think about. But could he be somebody if he's healthy? Sure. I think what you're going to have to pay him is going to be somewhere over like $5 million. And that's not a lot of money, but for the linebacker position, considering some of the other holes that we have, and if we're going to spend bigger at a position, I'd rather it still be at the cornerback spot. But for a guy like Shaq Leonard, though, again, do you like anytime I hear back and neck injuries, it's a rule that I have. I usually throw up the X and I'm like, you know what? I'm good on it. I'm going to stay away from it. And if I miss on it, I miss on it. It sucks. Now, if he could prove one more year again that he's able to go out there and play at a decently high level and stay healthy, then maybe we look at it next season. There's just some other names that I think are a little bit more reliable and for what the Raiders need and at that price tag than a guy like Shaq Leonard. Let's go to number 4 here on my list. Just speaking of injuries, Tyus Bowser. And kind of the same thing what I'm talking about Shaq here. Not the same injury, but to me, Bowser is absolutely a name that's going to be on the Raiders' radar just simply because he was cut by the Ravens this offseason. He missed all of 2023 with a knee injury, and if you know anybody that's close to with Baltimore, they were very confused on the Tyus Bowser injury. Like, they thought he was going to be able to play. I kind of would put it with, like, the Brandon Facyson injury last season with the Raiders, where earlier on you're like, all right, this guy made the 53-man roster. When are we going to see him on the field? And it just every single week was like, nobody has any information on Brandon Facyson, yet he's still on the roster. That's kind of what happened with Bowser. I will say this, the best season that he's ever had, at least I think so, was back in 2021 when Rob Ryan was the Ravens' inside linebacker coach. And, Bowser's probably going to be more of that outside linebacker type of player, so maybe the inside linebacker connection isn't all there. But I also know from players that I talk to, from people that are inside there, they really, really value Rob Ryan's opinion. And if Ryan is saying, like, hey, this is a linebacker, this is a guy that we could use, this would be a good fit for us, I do think he has enough say with Antonio Pierce, with Mike Caldwell, with the Raiders, where they would at least pick up the phone, give Tyus Bowser a call. Coming up next here on the show, we got the top 3 free agent linebacker options here for the Las Vegas Raiders. And again, this list is not based on who is the best player. This list is based on best player, fit, how much money it's going to cost, all that. I got my top 3 options coming up here in just a second. I do got to give a shout-out, though, to the Noty Gang. Shout out to David Silva, Ron Raspberry, Martin. I know y'all are always watching the show. I know you're subscribed. You got your notification bell on. If you don't see your name on here, or if you're like, Mitch, I want to see my name on here, because I see some people saying, Noty Gang, Noty Gang, Noty Gang. Here's the thing. You got to be the first person to do it. That's why it's important to hit that notification bell. Shout out to all 3 of these people for always watching the show. Let's go to number 3 here. It's a trip down memory lane, if you will. Number 3 is Blake Martinez, and I know there's going to be one Raider fan. It's a guarantee. Mitch, Blake Martinez, he retired back in 2022. You're right. You are 100% right. I'm actually pretty sure it happened week 8 because I can remember the text. Graf sent me a text 2 days before Martinez retired, and he goes, hey, just so you know, Martinez is going to be retiring later in this week. I'm like, you got to be shitting me. Because at the time, he was probably the Raiders' best linebacker, but he was also signed because of his knowledge with Patrick Graham, and he was with PG from 2020 to 2022 before he retired. He retired from the NFL, but then he returned last season, played with the Carolina Panthers. I actually think he got cut by them, and then he ends up going to Pittsburgh. And when he was with the Steelers, he was actually playing some pretty solid football. The other reason why I put him at 3 here is because the Raiders brought in Gerald Alexander, who was the safety coach last season for Pittsburgh. So maybe he's got a little bit of extra connection here with Blake Martinez. On top of that, also played with the Packers from 2016 to 2019, so maybe Getsy got to see him a little bit. Devontae Adams obviously got to see him a little bit. And the fact that Patrick Graham wanted Blake Martinez once, maybe he wants him back on the roster yet again. Though, the way that the whole thing ended, and with the whole Pokemon thing, if you guys haven't seen the Blake Martinez Pokemon story, definitely one to look at. But Rafael Murillo, you're right. I choose you. Let's go to number 2 here. We got Markus Golden, and another player that I've brought up here multiple times on this show, especially last offseason because of his connections with Patrick Graham. He was on the Steelers last year, played in 16 games, didn't start in any. He did play with PG back in 2020, and the reason why he's number 2 on this list is because I do actually think that Golden could still help out this Raiders linebacker room. An 86.5 overall grade, 77.8 against the run. I'm not going to sit up here and expect these type of numbers for a whole season because he played in spurts. But, like, could you at least find another linebacker that gives you, I don't know, 200, 250 snaps? Somebody where just in case the Divine Diablo goes down, in case Tommy Eichenberg isn't ready yet, are we confident relying on Amari Burney? Are we confident in relying on Luke Masterson for long periods of time if one of our top linebackers ends up going down? To me, the Raiders would be confident in Markus Golden, though I will admit, could be a name of, in case an injury happens, you look at Golden. Might not be somebody that they want to go out and sign right now. To me, though, the number one name, and this is somebody that, and it's, I'm going to be real, I said earlier on the show, who would be the number one linebacker that you would sign, or if, like, you did? To me, it's Zach Cunningham, and this is the only dude that I think that could legitimately start for this team right now here at the linebacker position. I would even have more confidence in Cunningham than I would in a dude like Divine Diablo. Played 13 games last season, started in 10 for the Philadelphia Eagles. Mainly is just a run stopper, and I know the Raiders already have one in Spillane, but I am curious if maybe that's just the type of player that they're looking for because they also went out and they drafted Tommy Eichenberg, and, like, that's what Cunningham is at this point. He is a run stopper, and if the Raiders want to go with more of these run stoppers at linebacker, I think it's only a matter of time before you see a guy like Patrick Graham go, okay, I want to find another like Jabril Peppers safety hybrid, an Isaiah Palameo, which is kind of like one of the things that they're trying to do, where you bring in more run stoppers at linebacker, and instead of trying to find a coverage linebacker, you just find a safety that's a little bit bigger, maybe built closer to a linebacker, but just has more athletic ability to be able to go out and cover guys, where if you're able to bring in Zach Cunningham on a recently decent deal, 85 tackles last season, to me, this is the number one, and he is the best linebacker available out there on the board. Now, if you didn't like my top 10, give me some names that you all think. Who should it be? If the Raiders can sign one linebacker, who would you want it to be? Also, I want you to consider fit. I want you to consider price tag. All of that has to go into the equation. For me personally, again, it is Zach Cunningham would be the number one player. If you're looking for some other cheap options, though, Markus Golden, Blake Martinez, Tyus Bowser. Realistically, this list to me starts at number 4. If you do want to find just some other cheap names out there, Cam Gill, Calvin Munson would be some other names that I would at least throw out there. Now, if you made it this far in the show, shout out to all of y'all. And again, we got close to 700 people watching this live thing. I am going to be continuing making videos the entire offseason, May, June, July. If there's one thing that we're going to bring, it's the content here on the Raiders Report.